everyone. Welcome to the Cynthia Lennox Show. I am your host, Cynthia Lennox. Here again to remind you again that this is the best season of your life. Now, I know some of you are saying, why are you always saying that? You don't know what my life is like and so forth. Well, let me tell you, if you're able to watch this show and at any time, or if you've been following the show, understand this. This is the best season of your life because we are in the greatest information age. You are evolving by the things that you're learning. You are being enlightened. You're becoming aware. You are creating an identity of your own. You have the ability to do that. You have the ability to exercise your critical thinking skills. You can reason, analyze, and again, think for yourself. You can process things. It's the greatest season of our lives. And as you continue to see it that way and live with great expectations and anticipating the best all the time, you'll see how your life will transform. And what it is, it's really renewing your mind, changing your mindset so that your life can transform. Remember, we're going through this journey of self-discovery. And in doing so, we have become aware that we can be the architect of our identity. Because if we don't create the identity that we want, that we desire, the person who we are, so that we can live our lives organically and become our true, authentic selves, then we will continue with the inherited identity that we have gotten or the way we have lived from a little baby, because we have all been programmed. We have all been conditioned, and we have all been indoctrinated by teachers, by religion, by your parents, by social construct. That happens by default. And then we go through life, with these situations, seeking clarity, seeking, finding, with anxiety and depression, trying to find out who we are, not being able to make decisions, seeking external validation and permission and affirmation from external sources, not knowing that we are, again, the architect of our lives. You are a magnificent creative being, and you have the ability to think. So this is your season. Make this your season. If you never saw it that way, make this your season. And you start with baby steps. Start acknowledging, admitting, recognizing that this is your season. This is your season to thrive. This is your season to become aware, to be enlightened, to learn stuff about you. And you start with yourself, because the greatest relationship you will ever have is the relationship that you have with yourself. You'll start to discover things about yourself, and you will give yourself permission to start becoming a certain way as you discover your true authentic self. You'll start saying things like, no, that's not going to work for me. I don't want to do that. You'll grow in confidence and become self-assertive and just really develop your own swag, your own identity. I'm telling you, there is nothing like when you create it. And once you find out that you are a magnificent creative being, I'm telling you, there is no stopping. Why? Because you will be able to design the life that you want. You will become the person that you really want to be. Some of you don't like the person that you are. Some of the traits and qualities, characteristics that you have, you may not like it, the attributes you have, and there may be something that's admirable. Sometimes I see things in people and I make sure I tell them, the great attributes. Yesterday I was at I had dinner with a friend, and she was sharing some things with me, and I said, wow, that is great self-authorship. And she never saw it that way. I said, because you took command. I said, she was a situation, she invited this person, and she thought, she sent the invitation, and if they didn't respond by 1 o'clock, then she would make another decision for someone else. And she took authority of that, or authorship. She followed through. Where in the first invitation, the first person would have been, something that, that would have been better, but she followed her word. And I said, wow, that's great authorship. It's so funny because we were there, this nice restaurant, and we went in, and it was like in the afternoon, like a late lunch. So it wasn't full, no noise, not too many people in there. So we had like a booth in a nice location, and our server Ismael came, and he was just really so attentive. And so we were there, and we were just, as they would say, chopping it up. We were just there laughing, and our conversation was so stimulating intellectually, but at the same time lighthearted, and we were just laughing and so forth, having a lot to share. And later on, this lady, this older woman, came in, and she sat in the booth adjacent to us, right, behind my friend, my girlfriend. And but we paid no attention. She came in by herself, and we were not really paying attention to her. We were just talking, and we were there for like 3 hours, and we had a fantastic time talking all this. And my voice kind of carries a little bit, and I have a good laugh. When something is funny, I have a good laugh. So we were there talking and talking and talking. So this woman was there about perhaps about 90 minutes, about an hour and a half. And when she was leaving, she stopped at our table, and she said, it is so nice to hear people engaging in such beautiful conversation. She said, you don't see that anymore, but it was so nice to hear you talk about the things you talked about. Oh my gosh. And we were like, of course we were both stunned, because we didn't, intend for anyone to hear our conversation, because some of it was spicy and, that kind of stuff. But evidently, and we don't know how much she heard or how much she stitched together. We don't know. The point is, that's what she said to us. And she was just so kind. It was an older woman. She came in with a walker. First of all, she said, and then I said, well, oh, so you're leaving. And she said, or something to that effect. Not you're leaving, because obviously she was. I said something. I said, well, I said, thank you for sharing that. And how are you doing? And she says, well, I'm just here. I don't know if she said surviving or something like that. I'm saying, no. I said, you are not surviving. I said, here you came in by yourself. You sat there. You had a drink, because she had a drink. And she had a walker, I mean, it's nothing having to do with the walker, the drink, but, she came in by herself, and with her walker, and she sat there, and I saw the waiters, the servers were so attentive to her as well. Now, it didn't dawn on me that she was by herself. I just didn't think that. But when she was leaving, obviously, then it clicked. And the fact that she stood right next to us, but she would not have been the subject of our conversation, because, there was no reason for it. But since she stopped at our booth to compliment us on the quality of our conversation, it's really interesting, because when you go out, for me, it's not even about the conversation. That's irrelevant. It's being present with the person that you're with, and communicating, I see you, I know your worth, I know your value, and, to the person that you're with. And we both, it was reciprocal. But the fact that someone else overheard our conversation and stopped, I mean, really, that's probably something that I would not even do, because I would think that, they knew that I was eavesdropping. But evidently, perhaps she didn't have to drop because we were having such a good time and we were laughing and so forth. And that was probably amusing to her. And at the same time, she heard everything. Imagine that. That was just wild. That was just wild. But I always say that the purpose of life is pleasure. And when I say that, I mean that. Now, I really never give any kind of explanation because I always say you can interpret that however you choose, and whatever that means to you, that's what it is. You may not see it that way. But when I'm going to just kind of, sprinkle a little highlights on this because when I say that, I am talking about it's not from a hedonistic standpoint. I don't mean reckless living, taking no responsibility, pure indulgence. That's not what I mean. But just yesterday, like sitting, knowing that I had a deep connection with this person, with this friend, engaging in such stimulating conversation, that brings me so much pleasure. When I think about a life of abundance, that brings me pleasure. When I think of the peace that I have, that brings me pleasure. When I think about my nervous system being regulated, that brings me pleasure. When I think of living with intention, living intentionally, that brings me pleasure. When I think that I am living in alignment with situations, with people and situations, circumstances, just living in alignment with life, that brings me pleasure. So, it's not pleasure and no pain, but pain doesn't ask permission to show up. Pain, suffering, challenges, all of that. No permission to show up. But I don't focus on that because whatever you focus on becomes your reality. So I'm going to focus on the things that brings me pleasure: deep conversations, great connections, a life of abundance, the generosity that I'm able to exercise. Why? Because when you think of abundance and you have the ability to be generous, then that is a source of pleasure. So when I say that life is for pleasure, that's what I mean, and I mean that, and that's how my mind works. Those are the things that I think about because, again, the opposite of that will take care of itself. Things happen, pain, suffering, challenges, all of that shows up unannounced and without permission, without asking for permission. So you don't have to think of that. Some people, as a matter of fact, I heard this young person saying, she said something like, in your life, you must expect pain and suffering and challenges and a hard life, and she just went on to, total opposite from how I think. In order to get a breakthrough, you must go through this first in order to get a breakthrough. She was saying you have to go through this so that you can be tested to then see the light at the end of the tunnel. Now, with that mindset, you know what? If you think that way, if you have a challenge that you're going through even now, and if you're thinking, okay, I'm going to have to go through this, but breakthrough is coming, that would be your mindset. That is what you will be thinking about. And as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. That is what you will be attracting. I don't know. I don't understand that type mindset because that's just not how I think. I am always think that I deserve the best, that I deserve to have a good life. I expect to have a good life, and and I anticipate having a good life. And guess what? That's what shows up. Opportunities, circumstances, situations, all these things just show up. Why? Because I anticipated. See, your mind doesn't discriminate. Your mind just takes the information that you feed it and executes accordingly. And that's how life happens. So if you are thinking, if your mind is programmed to think that you must first go through hardship and challenges and pain and suffering and misfortune and all of that, if you program your mind to think that, simply because you're going to have a breakthrough at the end of the tunnel, there's light. But in order to get there, you must go through this first. I don't think that way. And as a result, a lot of good things happen in my life. Now, you have the freedom to think. You can analyze, you can process things, you can reason. That's up to you. This show, as you can tell, I'm not here to tell you what to think or how to think, not even what to believe. That choice is yours. I am just here to bring awareness so that you will know that you are a magnificent creative being. And as you think in your heart, so are you. Whatever you focus on becomes your reality. Regardless of what it is, whether it's a health situation, whether it's your finances, if you believe that your life is abundant, when it comes to finances, that you are able to do whatever you want to do. If you need to, whatever it is, you need to get a new car, you want to travel someplace, you need to get a new house, whatever it is that you desire, you can create that by your mindset. Life will show you how to align. Because if you desire it, it already exists. It already exists. My friend, this whole thing is about renewing your mind, renewing your thinking, renewing your mindset, getting a new mindset, setting your mind, leveling up your thinking. And if you're in a situation where sometimes some of you right now, you may be in an environment, a circle that you have already outgrown. And you may be having difficulty getting out. Why? Because you're stuck in tradition. Stuck in tradition, conventional norms, social construct, all of that. Religious indoctrination, all of that. Because remember, we've all been programmed, conditioned, indoctrinated, all of that. And it's up to you to create an identity that and design the life that you want, the life that you desire. It's up to you, my friend. It really is up to you. And what I said earlier about some people that are stuck in tradition, or you may be in a circle that you need to get out. You need to get out of that circle, because in your mind you have leveled up. You are the version of yourself that was shaped by that environment. You hold yourself loyal to that at the expense of betraying yourself. So you're facing self-betrayal just because you remain loyal to the environment that shaped you. In the meantime, you have leveled up and you need to really, at this point, you need to move on. Otherwise, you'll be stuck in survival mode. And some of you are really not stuck. It's not stuck. You are just remaining in survival mode because you're afraid to leave. You're afraid to leave the pack. You're afraid to move on. And this is not a matter of good or bad, right or wrong, my friend. This is simply you creating an identity. You are walking through your journey of discover and learning who you are and taking the initiative to create the lifestyle that you desire and the identity that's becoming to you. You know, I had a conversation with someone about family dynamics because a lot of our identity is formed, created by our family nucleus, you know, or relatives or immediate family and relative and the culture of our family. From we were kids, no one can escape that. You learn and you are programmed, you do exactly what, you know, you eat the same way or the same things, you grow up eating the same way. And that's why when you go to the doctor, they want to know, you know, your family history, your family health history, because they're thinking, well, if you indulge in a lot of processed food and fried food and all that, that you will all, you know, suffer the same type of illness and so forth. And that's why they ask you that, because, you know, you fry chicken and in certain kind of oil, and well, that's the way my mom did it, and my mom did it that way because my grandma did it that way, and so forth. And so we are subject to that type of programming, of that type of conditioning. And until we become aware, and that's why I say this is the season of your awareness, of your enlightenment, until we become aware that we have choices, that we have options, and that we are responsible. You're responsible for exercising your options, your ability to think critically. You can reason, you analyze things, and you process things that work for you. It has to work for you, not for someone else, or not what everybody else. Because if you're an adult, even if you're a kid, you don't really have a lot of choice. You don't, because you're a kid, you're just subject to what you're given, what you learn, what you're taught, you know, the culture, the environment that you're in. But once you become of age, and that's why sometimes your teenagers, you know, we say that they're rebellious. Why? Because they want to break away from a way of living. You know, they may be, you know, they grow up and they see the whole family obese because of the way they eat, and, you know, they go to school, they're criticized, and then they want to change that. They go to the extreme, they become anorexic because they don't want to, you know. And so there's a lot of things that happens, you know, in those early years, where we find that they're looking for themselves, and then we think that there's a problem, there's a situation, and so forth. But no, it's just that they wanting to find themselves. And some of us, you know, I remember when I was growing up, as I mentioned many times on my show, that I was kicked out of boarding school 3 times. The first time they took me back, my dad was able to pull some strings, get me back in there. Second time was the same thing. The third time they said, no, that's it, she's too mischievous, we don't want her, and they wouldn't take me back. And with that, you know, my dad, he yanked me out, and my sister, he says, if one can't stay, none of them are going to stay anyway. So, but I wasn't bad. I was just missing. As a matter of fact, when I went back home to my country, and you know, they thought something was wrong with me, and they took me to a psychologist. They took me to get help. And nothing was wrong with me, you know, psychologically. All they could figure out was that I was missing my home environment. I wanted to be home with my younger sister, and I'm in the middle. You know, I have an older and a younger, and with my parents. And then I went to school locally, and I excel, and in such a way that they were like, wow. So I was trying to find me, and through that behavior of rebellion or just mischief, I accomplished that. I was able to get back in the environment that I wanted. But if you have gone through life not going through any changes, or haven't really gone through a journey of self-discovery, then you are more than likely living an inherited identity. You are in an inherited identity. Your identity was shaped by your environment. It was shaped by traditional norms, conventional ideologies, religious doctrines, by your friend, your family, your social construct. It was formed, and you really had. Again, it's not a matter of good or bad, right or wrong. You had nothing to do with that. That is what you were dealt. That is what you were dealt. But comes a point in your life that once you become aware of who you are, and as I mentioned, you are a magnificent creative being. And once you become aware of who you are, once you become enlightened, once you start knowing and discovering the creative being that you are, you start taking responsibility. You become personal, your personal sovereignty. You become self-authorship. Uh, you become self-governed because you take full responsibility for yourself, and you no longer ask for permission from external sources. You do things, and you allow yourself, you give yourself permission to live. When you are born in a family, family dynamics, you may be connected by DNA and genetics. It doesn't mean that's where you remain. It doesn't mean they are your connections by choice. You're connected by DNA and by genetics. It doesn't mean you have to stay there or that you are friends now. Some families have a great dynamic. I have a friend that, mom and dad, she's my friend, and she's got 4 kids, and they just interact. They're so supportive of each other. It's a beautiful family dynamics. Of course, it doesn't mean they don't have conflict. Of course, they have conflict. Sometimes they have conflicts between the siblings, but it's nothing like out of this world or something. No, they resolve it, and they just continue. But they are happy to vacation together and to get together and be supportive of each other, and that is so beautiful. But then again, you have other families that are full of drama, chaos, and just discord. They just simply don't get along. And again, it's not a matter of good or bad, right or wrong. Everyone is an adult, and every adult is a whole person with their own identities, their own experience, their own personality. It doesn't mean that you vibe in the same frequency with everyone at all. You may not, and it doesn't mean that you're mad at them. Now, if you have situations, drama, conflict, and so forth, well, then that's a whole different situation, and it's no different than you having a conflict with a coworker or just somebody that somebody in your circle, your friendship, having a conflict with a friend or whatever. Well, that could happen within the family dynamics. So it doesn't mean because you share the same DNA and genetics that you have to like each other. I have 2 sisters, same mom and dad. We grew up in the same household with the same, principles and morals and so forth. And as we grew, there was a time in our lives that we didn't speak. At least they didn't speak to me. We didn't speak. We were not in communication. And it wasn't anything that happened. I think one situation, my mom was ill, and then, I wanted to do certain things, and my sister, my older sister, she's a nurse, and there was some conflict because I had my own ideas, and She had her own ideas, and there was some conflict. So there was a period that we didn't speak at all. We didn't speak. We didn't communicate. None of that. Of course, when my mom passed, then of course, but even after that, we didn't speak. And then with my younger sister, we had a situation we didn't speak at all for many years. And with my younger sister, when my dad passed away, there were some things where I collaborated with the arrangements and so forth. And after that, we started talking. By then, we're grown, we're adults, we respect each other. Now, we didn't even go back to say, well, let's resolve this. There was no closure. There was no let's resolve this, forgiveness. There was none of that. We just started talking, and we continued to talk. And we both respect each other's partner. And we just started enjoying our conversations. And sometimes we would be on the phone for like 2 hours just talking, and it just evolved. No explanation, no forgiveness, no, well, you did this and I thought this, and none of that. We just started talking. We chose to be friends. We are sisters biologically, and that's great. But at this point, we chose to be friends. And it makes it so much sweeter because, again, she's an adult and I'm an adult, and we came together, and we just really like each other. My sister is well-read. They're both smart, intelligent, all of us. And relevant, well-read, and it's a pleasure to talk with her because you can talk about current events. You can talk about just about anything with her. So that relationship turned. So then my adult sister, we weren't speaking for a long time. And she had some changes in her life, and she got divorced, she got married, and did some big moves, adventurous moves. They picked up and they moved to another country in Latin America, and they were there, bought a big house. And, once I found out, I thought that was just like fantastic. I was like happy for her. And we just started talking. And she was telling me about, the changes and all of that. And it was just amazing. It was wonderful. And with time, they were there for a while, a couple of years. And when they decided they didn't want to be there anymore and they wanted to move back to another country, they just did that. I thought you guys are a couple of just amazing duo that are not afraid to move. They did not hesitate. They did not vacillate. They thought, this is what I want. And they did that. And I thought that was just such a great position to take, such a great mindset. No fear. This is my oldest sister and her husband. They have no fear. They'll move wherever. And they're really living a fulfilled, meaningful, fulfilled life. And we started talking. And we talk, and now we call each other whatever. The other day, last week it was, because my sister's talking about a business situation, a business opportunity, and so forth. And I'm so excited for her in that venture. And I said, let's do a Zoom call on my stream here. And so we I carved out the whole afternoon. From 6 o'clock, I said, we're gonna talk about this and so forth. So she got on the phone and whatever, and we tried to connect, and she couldn't connect. For some reason, I don't know, she had to get familiar with her laptop and so forth. And I said, and she, for a second, she was like, you know what? I don't want to waste your time. let me just figure this out and we can set up another time. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I carved out the rest of this afternoon to share with you. So let's take our time, and I'm kind of that way. I like to get things resolved. I like to get things fixed. And I said, so anyway, we spent a good 15, 20 minutes trying to figure things out, and we got it fixed. We were Zooming for like 3 hours. I think I got off the phone like at 9:30. 6 o'clock. We made an appointment for 6 o'clock, and I wasn't off till about 9:30. We just laughed, we talked, we shared ideas. It was rich. Then again, now, even back then, that didn't open the opportunity for us to be friends. We had already not even resolved the issue. We started talking a while back because once they started making that move, and her husband is just amazing, and we just love each other. He's my brother. He doesn't want the brother-in-law. I'm your brother, and we had already rekindled our relationship, and chatting back and forth and so forth. But for this situation, we made an appointment, and it was wonderful because again, we are now friends. We are siblings, same mom and dad, grew up in the same household, but we now have made a choice to be friends. When we start, when we resume communication, because we were estranged from each other for many years, over 5 years, something like that. I don't know that long, but 3, 4, 5 years, whatever. I just lived my life and she lived her life. Of course, we're in different states, but now we are. So you see, and I have leveled up. She has leveled up. Of course, my younger sister, she's just relevant in everything all the time. She's just with it. And my older sister, she is, she's positive, she's optimistic, she's a visionary, she's highly motivated. She's not working as a nurse anymore. She's retired. Now she's looking for something else, another type of business. And that's fascinating to me because, I was able to give her some tips and we were able to talk and laugh and just really have a fantastic time, 3.5 hours on Zoom. Just talking. At this point of our lives, we have all leveled up. We are aligned with each other. There is mutual respect. There is the desire to see each other succeed. There is a lot that we have in common. There's a lot that we have to share. So the dynamics of the relationship is totally different. It's like having a friend. But it was clear to us without even thinking that, when we were sisters, but it doesn't mean that because, now if you can be friends all, your years with your sister, that's great. But it doesn't mean that that's the person that you have to be friends with just because you're sisters. Doesn't mean that. And that's clear to me. And a lot of you are in relationships. You have family dynamics. You may not fit in. Why? Because you have outgrown them. Again, it's not good or bad, right or wrong. You have simply outgrown them. Why? Your experiences, your awareness, you've been enlightened, and you no longer follow that tradition, that family tradition. And some of you are in situations and you say, well, I just go to keep the peace. When you do that, you are betraying yourself. That is self-betrayal. To keep the peace for who? Because then you become resentful and you become grouchy. You don't want to go. You don't want to participate, whether it's a birthday, whatever it is. And it's not, I am just sharing with you that You have to do what works for you. And the things that no longer serve you, you have to be able to walk away from that. You have to be able to walk away from uh, that circle, that environment, those relationships. It doesn't mean you abandon your family, but if you're going to grow, if you're going to evolve, if you're going to expand your horizon, you're going to be doing some different things. You may want to travel. As a matter of fact, I know, some families, they don't want their family to relocate or to move to another state. Why? Because here is where the family nucleus is. They want everybody to be here. They don't want you to travel because they're afraid of what may happen overseas. So they're contained by fear, by familiarity, by a comfort zone. And you may be out of that. Your mindset is totally different. You're thinking growth, expansion. You are evolving. You want adventure. You want spontaneity. You want a different life. In your mind, you just simply no longer fit. It's not a matter of good or bad, right or wrong. You simply don't fit. And if it's your time to move on, then do so. If you think, okay, I want to move to Greece, then you move to Greece. You find out everything that you need to do, and you just move. You just do whatever works for you. My friend, life will only reward you based on the things that you dare it. It's not a matter of this journey. This journey is not for the weak. If you're going to really come out to the fullness of who you are, it's beautiful because there's just so much to learn, so much beauty in the world, people to get to know, opportunities, situations, things that you will attract. There's just so much that you can allow yourself to enjoy. But it's up to you. You can either stay stuck or in survival mode, because that's what it is. When you choose to remain in an environment where you no longer fit, it becomes survival mode. You don't want to upset the apple cart. You don't want to upset the family tradition. You don't want to change the family dynamics. And you stay in survival mode. Why? Because, you want to go, but then, something is pulling you, and you have to make a decision. That's why I say the best relationship you can have is the relationship you have with yourself. And when you know who you are, when you make decisions for yourself and take responsibility, then you transform into the person that you want to be, and you will be giving your best to everyone around you, your family members, everyone around you. So it's up to you. And you can't allow yourself to feel bound. There are a lot of relationships that I know of, family relationships, siblings and so forth, that are performative. People feel, well, that's my sibling, I have to do this. And they do it with resentment, with anger, with bitterness. And they do certain things with a negative emotion, not knowing or not admitting, acknowledging, or not recognizing that you don't have to do that. But yes, but it's my sibling. No, that's genetics. That's biology. That you may be connected by DNA, but if you are aware of who you are, then you You don't have to feel obligated, because what's going to happen? The relationship is going to be fake. It's going to be performative, and you're going to pretend that you're close, or you love each other, like each other, whatever. It doesn't mean you don't love your family. Let me get that straight. It doesn't mean you don't love them. And because even when my sisters and I were estranged from each other, if I had to go, if there was an emergency, I would respond to that. But there was a time that we didn't like each other. We weren't friends. It's better now because, it's just nice to be able to. As a matter of fact, last night, we were talking on the phone, and it's just wonderful. I enjoy that because I like them. They're smart. But one thing I am not going to do, and one thing you should not do either, is be fake. That's no bueno. Be fake in a relationship that's inauthentic. Because your objective is to become your true authentic self, to design an identity that fits you, tailored, fit you. Know your worth, your value, set up your standards, your boundaries, your non-negotiables. You ought to be able to do that. And when that happens, you ought to be able to say, no, that's not going to work for me. That's simple. To whomever. It could be your parent. I know that may sound a little difficult, but if it's not a matter of, life or death, then yeah, you could say, no, Mom, that's not going to work for me. Let's look at this another way. You grow, you'll mature, you become confident and assertive. Let's do this, give options. Why? Because you can think critically, you can analyze, you can reason, you can process things. I remember my mom used to say, if you want things done, you can see Cynthia. And it's interesting because back then she used to say that all the time. If you want to get it done, you can see Cynthia, because she sees me as a hands-on, and I can move and shake and make things happen and so forth. And it's so interesting because back then I didn't have language for this. I didn't even know what that meant. But it's interesting also because when I heard her say that, then I would almost live up to that expectation. And I did, not even realizing that. But if somebody needed help or whatever, I didn't just try to problem solve everybody's issue, but when it came to her, I step up like that. I would get on a plane and I would go see her and take her to the to her appointments and things like that, and I would show up. I remember one time, it was funny. Back then there was no caller ID, and it just came out, and she had a landline, and after a while she kept saying, my phone bill is going up, and after about a year or so, she was getting bills like $100 and something, almost $200. And I said, okay, share it with me or whatever. I don't know how she got it to me, but the point is, when I realized they were charging her like every month for caller ID services, well, she didn't have a caller ID, and the phone company, Ma Bell or something in New York City, I called them. I'm over here in another state, and I called them and I resolved that stuff. She got almost like $300 refund when I was finished with them. They refund her money. She didn't understand the dynamics of all of that, but I did. And I called him and I resolved that like that. Within a week, it was resolved. A couple of days, I think, or something like that. But that's, again, when it comes to Mom, for me, but I'm not going to say no to that, but you ought to be able to stand on your own and say no to whomever, because it's you. When you become a better person, you then become the best version of yourself, to give yourself, to offer yourself, to help someone else. And that's what we want to be. We want to be the best version of ourselves at every time. And it doesn't matter, again, it doesn't matter whether you're connected, because again, biological connection doesn't mean that there is a real social connection. It's not biological connections. DNA, genetics are not chosen connection. You did not choose that. It's wonderful if there's great family dynamics, but some family members have toxic behaviors. I don't necessarily say that people are toxic, because I don't think in those terms, but their behavior, their attitude, their thinking, their ways is toxic, and it can upset your peace. And it's important that you understand that and get away from that. You cannot, I don't care what that person is, you cannot subject yourself to that. Try to figure something out. And don't, you try to detach mentally, or there's so many ways. Sometimes you're sharing the same space and you don't, know how to get away from that. But sometimes you have to step away and reset. It's all about you. And, when people say, well, that's selfish. No, it's not being selfish. It's being aware. Because guess what? It is, to take care of yourself. That's not a luxury. That is a necessity. You must, because you know what? Stress and anxiety and depression, they'll set in and mess you up. Your nervous system will become dysregulated. And then you're the one that would create inflammation, get sick, and all of that. You've got to take care of yourself. If someone else don't want to take care of themselves, then again, everyone has a choice. Everyone has a choice. You have to exercise your choice, your option. And your option is to take care of yourself. This whole journey, there are things, and it gets, it gets interesting, because we are so subject to traditional norms, and traditional thinking is like, people always say, well, I do this to keep the peace. No, I don't do anything to keep the peace. If I have something to now, I'll do things to keep my peace. I could walk away, because I don't personally, I don't believe in like closure and healing and all of that. I always think, and when I say that, I mean, because my closure is me walking away, and my healing is me, processing the situation and then determining what I need to do. I don't want to subject myself to someone else for closure, healing, breakthrough, let's talk it out, forgiveness, and all of that. I don't want to. No, because you have to bring someone else in, and then you talk about it, you discuss it, and right there you could create pulling a different kind of situation, and it's not that's just not my way of thinking. Now, you may think differently, and again, it's not good or bad, right or wrong. What works for you is what you should do. What works for you. And if it no longer serves you, that's when you get rid of it. That's what I do. The things that no longer serve me, I get rid of it. Limiting beliefs that no longer serve me. People that talk about money is the root of all evil, or the love of money is the root of all evil. And they get into all these discussions, and all those are all traditional thinking. Well, I can tell you right now, I love money because money is a tool, and I will know what to use it for. And I like being able to use it, and it helps me to be generous. So, see, I don't get into all that kind of semantics. It says money is the root of all evil. Oh, no, it's the love of money the root of, well, I like the money and I love the money. So that alone takes care of my decision as to what works for me. I'm not afraid that, I'm going to go astray because I love money. Now, you have to know, and with this, you become bodacious as well. Start with one thing and keep doing it over and over and over and over. Understand, this is the best season of your life. Why? Because you are in a season, an era of information. There is no reason for you not to know things. There's no reason for you to be ignorant. There is no reason for you to be missing out. Why? Because you can do your own research. You can get information for yourself and make decisions for yourself. That's what it takes. It takes you making a decision for yourself. It's about you making the decision for yourself. Taking full responsibility for your life. This, what I share is totally, it's totally sometimes unconventional, but that's okay, because that's what I try to get away from. Traditional norms, conventional habits. Oh, we've always done it this way. I get away from that. There's always something new and something better. My friend, I'm going to leave you with that so that you can sup on that. But one thing you must know is that you are a magnificent creative being. And if you have elevated, if you have upgraded yourself from your thinking, and you no longer fit in a circle, don't be afraid to move on. Do not be afraid to move on. A lot of you are sharing that, yeah, but it's my family. Well, if you want to stay, then stay. You can stay in survival mode. If that's what, but then you can't complain when you're not growing. You can't complain when you're not growing, or you're anxious, or you are, you feel depressed and you're not evolving. And so you can't complain. It is your choice. The choice is yours. Every Thursday we meet here at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. And if you can't join me at that time, look at the icons down here. It's Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can pick up the show. It streams 24/7, and you can pick it up on any one of those platforms. If you would like to drop me a note, my email is info at thecynthialennoxshow.com, and I will respond to you. If there's something that you want me to include in my show, I will process it and share from it. But I encourage you, my friend, to keep the rein with a firm grip, because it is up to you to design the life that you desire and create the identity that best fits you. Whoever you want to become, you can create that. In the meantime, I'm going to say ta-ta. I'm going to say adios. I'll see you next Thursday, same time, same place. You have one more day, Friday, and then here's the weekend. I hate thinking that way, like living for the weekend, because I enjoy every day, and like to do things every day that is pleasure, as I shared earlier. Anyway, amigos, have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you same time.